I'm Nicole. Welcome to Sunnyside Homestead. Today I'm going to show you how you can propagate your own figs and elderberries. Real easy, real simple, a free way to expand your own gardens on the homestead. Let's go. So here's what you're going to need. You're going to need a pair of clippers. You're going to need your branches. Now, really important to talk about here, when you're clipping your figs or your elderberries or any type of plant that you're going to propagate in this method, it's really important that you use sticks that are brown and hard with bark. You don't want anything green. Also, you want to make sure that they're within 1 or 2 years old. I have some that are 3 to 4 years old, so they're a lot thicker than this. But you want them, let me just bring it in there. You're going to want them about this size, and this is what you want them to look like. Now, really important with the elderberries, and the figs are going to be the same way. When you cut them and you put them in your water, and I'll show you that in a minute, you're always going to want to make sure your leaves are pointing upwards. So that's really, really important here. So what I've done is I've cut this branch here, and so I cut it off of the elderberry plant. So what I did is I left about 1 inch from the leaf to the bottom, and I cut it, right? So what you're going to want to do is cut them in sections. So for this, you're going to want to make sure you have a notch at the bottom, and you're going to want a notch at the top. So what you're going to do is you're going to cut about 1 inch above that top notch. And then this is what you're left with. So what you're going to have is you're going to have the notch at the top, and you're going to have a notch at the bottom. So when you put it in your water, both of your plants are going to be facing up. This is where your roots are going to sprout from, down here at the bottom. What's going to happen is you're going to get little white nodules that form after a few weeks, and then that's actually going to become your root system. So this, let me find a good one here for you. Here we go. So this is what it's going to look like after a few weeks. You see, we've got really nice leaves at the top, and we've got a good root system at the bottom. So this bottom here is going to turn into this. And after about 3 to 4 weeks, you're going to have these really nice roots growing out of the bottom. So before it gets to that point, just to show you what the nodules look like, you're going to see this. See, you can see those white little things coming out. Now this is a fig. So we've done the same thing with the fig, the same concept. We've just cut it and we've placed it in water and put it in the windowsill. Now a few differences that I want to talk about between the elderberries and the figs. Your elderberries are going to propagate a lot faster than your figs. So your figs, there's a lot of different methods for propagating figs. So you can do dirt method. You can wrap the bottom in like a growing hormone or like a growing agent, and, wrap it up in a towel and put it aside. Or I've seen people, just direct plant them in the soil. This method works for us. So what we do is we get a mason jar, or any jar really. We fill it about halfway up with water, and then we put our twigs that we've cut. Remember, the plants have to be facing up. We put it in the water, and then after a few weeks, you're going to start seeing the green sprouts on them. You're going to start seeing roots form at the bottom. And again, your elderberries are probably going to start propagating within 2 to 3 weeks, where your figs are probably going to be 30 to 45 days. So what you're going to want to do is, I do it every Sunday. You can pick whatever day during the week you want, but once every week, I rinse the water out of my mason jars, and I keep them on the windowsill right here in my kitchen window. You're going to want to empty out your water. You're going to want to clean out your jar. I don't use soap. I just use hot water and just rinse it out real good and get any fallen leaves or bark or anything off of out of there. And then I fill it with fresh, cool water, and then I put them back in there and put them back on the windowsill. That keeps the oxygen in the water, because that is what causes them to propagate in the water this way, is the oxygen in the water. So that's definitely a necessity when it comes to propagating stems like this. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and take the rest of my stick. And now see, I've got, from where I cut, to this next notch right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut this little piece off, and then I'm going to go again, and I'm going to cut an inch above the next notch. And that'll make them relatively the same size. So do the same thing here. So now I've cut that little piece off. Now, when you come to your little fork in the road like this, what I do is just cut an inch off of the one side, and then I'll cut the inch off the other side. And then what you're going to be left with is this, which is fine because you're still going to get leaf growth off of that. Actually, the one that I showed you just a second ago was one that was cut just like this. So you're still going to have propagation that comes off of both sides. It's just really important that you make sure that all of your nodules, again, I'm repeating this a million times, but it's so important if you want your plants to propagate successfully that the stems have to be pointing upwards. And the same thing for the figs. Now, when you get to the smaller end of the stick, the end here that's not exactly 1 to 2 years old yet, you can see it's still kind of flimsy. It's brown, but there's still a lot of green in it. This isn't going to be good for propagating. You can put it in water and see what happens, but I normally just discard, like these smaller flimsy green pieces here. It's really best to get the ones that are covered in the nodules like that. That's where your roots are going to sprout from. So that's really important. So what you're left with when you're all said and done is a mason jar glass full of sticks. And we have, and actually I'll show you my figs. Look. That's after about 30 days. And I actually even have a fig growing on this one, which is pretty cool. If you can see that right there. So that's pretty neat. But basically what you're going to be left with is a window full of mason jars and plants. So what we do with the elderberries, now your figs you're just going to leave up. You don't cut those down because they're going to bush, and year after year they're going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. With elderberries, it's best when you have an elderberry bush, you're going to want to cut that down to the ground before your first frost. So basically you're going to want to, just hack it all the way down to the ground, and, so where you can't really even see it poking up through the dirt, and then let it grow back up year after year from the roots. Now we're trying an experiment this year. We actually cut a lot of our elderberries down to the ground, but we left 2 up, because I'm curious to see what happens with those in the spring. Luckily, we're, fortunate enough, we have a ton on our property, and we're propagating about 60 plants right now. So, if we lose 2 in the process for the sake of science, then we're okay with that. But basically what we want to do is we cut them down to the ground, and then in the spring they'll grow back up from the roots. So next year we'll be able to propagate some more. So, the bigger they get, the more branches you have, the more plants you can propagate. So we're excited to see how that turns out next year. So for your elderberries, you're going to want to cut those down to the ground. They'll grow back up. And, for those that aren't familiar with elderberries, obviously you can cook with them. A lot of people make syrups, and use them for colds or flus. They're good, they have good medicinal uses. But fun fact, they're also great for your chickens. Chickens will use elderberry bushes for shelter, so it's really good to grow your elderberry plants around your chicken coops or around your chicken houses if you can. One, they'll hide under them, of course, because they bush and they use it for shelter, shade, or a way to get out of the weather. But they eat them. And, elderberries are great medicinal uses for humans, but they're also great for medicinal uses for your poultry. So turkeys, ducks, chickens, all of those will benefit from eating them. I believe that, I read somewhere that they're like a natural parasitic. So they're going to, rid your birds of any mites or parasites or, things like that they may have. But they're really good for them. So they're high in a lot of vitamins and proteins that we need. So, they're definitely a good, a good thing to have around the homestead for sure. So, But yeah, so that's what we're doing. Like I said, we have about 60 or, just elderberries, and we probably have about 40 figs right now that are propagating. So once, we're ready to plant them in the spring, we'll take you around. And don't worry about leaving them in the windowsill. It's completely fine. Ours have been there for months. As long as you keep changing the water out every week, you'll be great. Just, make sure that you're changing your water out once a week. Keep that oxygen fresh in your water, and you'll be great. And they'll leaf out. They may even fruit. And by, after our frost, I think here in Virginia, it's probably going to be late March, maybe mid-April. That's when we'll go ahead and just direct plant them into the soil, and we'll be good to go. And then year after year, we'll have more elderberries to propagate. So thanks for tuning in and sticking around. And stay tuned for another video.